This is the Railyard and platform safety training. Next slide. Agenda. The purpose of this guide is to outline and encourage a set of standard operating procedures for the safe operation of tugs and floats on various train platforms. For these purposes, we will focus primarily on people and how to navigate work areas safely with passengers present. Equipment, how to safely use equipment to perform daily tasks. Process, establishing processes that must be followed in order to operate safely. Emergency incident procedures, what to do in the case of an emergency. The goal is to prevent accidents and injuries that could occur due to unsafe and inconsistent practices. Next slide. Commonly used words. Track, the structure used for the purpose of carrying trains on rails. The rails are supported on lengths of hardwood timber or concrete referred to as ties. The ties are laid upon a bed of crushed bluestone known as ballast. Platform, area even with the passenger cars, allowing level loading and unloading of passengers and equipment. Crossing, a place where employees and equipment may cross railroad tracks at grade level. PPE, personal protective equipment. Gauge, also referred to as battery charge gauge, includes the amount of energy remaining to power the unit. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. Speed limit, 2 miles per hour is the maximum speed limit that's allowed. It is equivalent to walking speed. Next slide. Incident, any situation involving a tug that causes a train to be delayed or stopped for any reason. This term is also used to describe related tug safety situations. High traffic area, a place with high pedestrian traffic or a crossing with multiple tracks. The yard, the area where the trains are staged for repairs and loading or unloading. Tug, also referred to as a tractor, is a vehicle powered by electricity or propane used to tow floats. Chock is a block or wedge placed under the wheel to prevent the vehicle from moving. Float, the transportation cart upon which food is loaded and is towed by a tug. Lower tracks, also referred to as downstairs, are the tracks 23 through 28. Station front, a place where pedestrians access the platforms and is a high traffic area. Next slide. Proper PPE on platforms or rail yards. Required, a hard hat, high visibility vest, safety glasses, non-slip shoes with a defined heel. Optional, gloves. Next slide. Equipment checks. Make sure the equipment you take to the platform or yard is in working condition. Pre-op checklist. A pre-op checklist must be completed at the beginning of each shift by the user of the vehicle. Supervisors will do a follow-up of the pre-op checklist for mechanical and safety integrity of the vehicle. If the vehicle is found to be unsafe, you are to notify a manager and an out-of-service tag will be placed on the vehicle and the keys will be removed. A pre-op walk-around visual inspection of the vehicle by the driver is always required, including a check of the lights, the horn, fluid under the tug, emergency brakes, tires, the battery charge, and any new body damage. If a float is being used, the pre-op inspection will include making sure the ramp is securely latched and the safety bar is engaged, temperature, battery charge, emergency brake, tires, any new body damage, and any hydraulic fluid leak. Next slide. Startup procedure. Understand the vehicle you are operating and where the features are located. Never walk between coupled vehicles. Before starting the vehicle, you must remove the chock from the wheels, be in the seat, place your foot on the brake, turn the key in the ignition, disengage the emergency brake, and before proceeding, look in all directions to make sure the path is clear and sound the horn to alert pedestrians of your presence. Next slide. Exiting procedure. When exiting the vehicle, apply the emergency brake. Place the forward reverse switch in the off position. Shut off all lights. Remove the keys from the ignition. Chock the wheels. Never park the vehicle in front of a fire extinguisher or emergency equipment. The forward and reverse switch must be placed in the off position when parked or unattended. Next slide. Platform training. Platform types. Depending on where you are, there are two types of passenger station platforms: high-level platforms and ground or low-level platforms. High-level platforms. High-level platforms present an additional hazard of being about 4 feet above the ground. A fall from one of these platforms onto the tracks below could result in a serious injury. Be aware of footing at all times. Be aware of train movements at all times. And not all trains stop to pick up passengers. A train you may think is stopping may actually be traveling at a high rate of speed. Next slide. Passenger station platforms. Most platforms will have a yellow tactile area near the edge of the platform. This indicates that the area must be kept clear for train movements. Each tile is usually 12 inches wide. A total zone is 24 inches wide. In some cases, Aramark personnel service trains while they are stopped at stations and are protected by the train crew against unexpected movement of the train. Next slide. Platform overview. Observe the following precautions when vehicles are on the platforms. When children are present, shut down the vehicle and wait for them to exit the area. Check all clearances carefully, especially when driving between station pillars and platform edges. Load your vehicle carefully so that it is not top-heavy or unstable and does not lean. When in doubt, stop the vehicle and wait for passengers to clear the area. Never drive a vehicle on a platform where a train is moving. When traveling, always use the platform side where there is no train when possible. When a train is approaching on the side where your vehicle is traveling and the track on the other side has a train on it, park the tug in the middle of the platform and wait for the train to stop. Be careful in rain and snow where it is easy for your vehicle to slide or get stuck. Since rain and snow pose potential traction problems, vehicles are to travel below 2 miles an hour in such conditions. Next slide. Platform pedestrian safety. One of the biggest challenges we have here as drivers is maintaining high safety standards while working in close proximity of Amtrak passengers and workers per day. Follow these rules to minimize your safety exposure around pedestrians. Always yield to pedestrians. Stop when pedestrians are in your line of travel. Use a horn or safety beeper when traveling in pedestrian areas. Turn on lights and beacons always to increase your visibility to pedestrians. Be aware, pedestrians are often running to catch the train and possibly from behind you. Train doorways and columns can obscure pedestrians and create blind spots. When passing doors, sound horn to alert pedestrians of your presence. When children are present on the platform, stop the vehicle and wait for them to exit the area or enter the train before proceeding. Never exceed the speed limit of 2 miles per hour. Next slide. Track safety. In closing, again, the purpose of this guide is to outline and encourage a set of standard operating procedures for the safe operation of tugs and floats on various train platforms. For these purposes, we have focused primarily on people, how to navigate work areas safely with passengers present; equipment, how to safely use equipment to perform daily tasks; process, establishing processes that must be followed in order to operate safely; emergency incident procedures, what to do in the case of emergency. The goal is to prevent accidents and injuries that could occur due to unsafe and inconsistent practices. However, this guide is not intended to answer every question and cover every possible scenario. You are encouraged to interact with your GMs, warehouse operation managers, and supervisors, and safety leaders on a daily basis to keep the safety dialogue up to date and relevant in your location. Next slide. The basic track structure. You've got ballast, ties, rails, and track. Next slide. Moving trains are dangerous on any track, in any direction, at any time. Slow-moving trains or moving equipment in yards or terminal areas are just as dangerous as fast-moving mainline trains. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. Crossing tracks on foot. Never step on a rail. Avoid crossing over switch layouts. Next slide. Crossing tracks in PIVs. Be aware, especially in snow-covered conditions, that the crossing is not a line straight across. Proceed with caution, as this hazard can overturn a vehicle if crossed with excessive speed. Next slide. Preparing to cross. Spotter-assisted crossing. A spotter is mandatory at a track crossing. A vehicle may not proceed until the spotter signals the driver that it is safe to cross. Under no circumstances is a driver permitted to cross without a spotter. Look both ways. When the last car of a train passes, do not proceed across tracks until you are certain there are no trains approaching from either direction on any track. Trains can always operate in both directions. Double check. Before crossing the tracks, take your time to double check. The train you see may be closer and moving faster than you think. Listen. Never rely on a train horn to warn you of an approaching train. Visibility. Be alert to obstructions that might block or obscure your view of an approaching train. Be alert to weather conditions and how it will affect conditions and visibility at the crossing. Visual checks. Slow down when approaching a crossing and stop before the crossing. Stop and perform a visual check at each crossing to ensure your safe passage. A visual check is performed by looking in all directions, left and straight ahead, before passing through any crossing. Next slide. Crossing reminders. Stop, look, listen. Cross tracks only at approved crossings. Always yield the right-of-way to trains. If ever in doubt about a train's speed, stop. Know the length of your vehicle prior to leaving the safe area. Before proceeding, consider all conditions in the surrounding area which may block your exit. Never cross a track when crossing is partially blocked. Stay 20 feet away from the end of a standing car or train when crossing the tracks. Never stop your vehicle on a track. Do not change gears or speed when crossing to avoid an engine stall. The speed limit is 2 miles per hour. Crossings are often oily and very slippery in wet weather. Approach crossings and tracks as straight as possible and do not accelerate or steer quickly.